Welcome to our Thought Leader session as part of our 21st Tech Titans Gala. And I appreciate you being here, both in the room and those of you who are online streaming it or watching it recorded. So it will be available recorded as well. I have the privilege of having a conversation with Randy Pitchford, who is the CEO of the year for this year. And he is the CEO of Gearbox Entertainment. I think I got that right. You'll correct me if I didn't. And what we want to do today is just have a conversation. I'm going to let Randy tell you a little bit more about yourself. Should introduce myself first. I'm Amy Wheelus, and I am the chair of Tech Titans, the chair of the board of directors. And it's my privilege to be a part of this organization. I'm also with AT&T, and who is a member company within Tech Titans. So with that, Randy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started in interactive entertainment?
Sure. My name is Randy Pitchford. I'm the founder and CEO of the Gearbox Entertainment Company. And it's called the Gearbox Entertainment Company because that is what we are. Our mission is to entertain the world. And I believe that joy and happiness is what makes life worth living. Our ability to hope for it, to pursue it, and to experience joy is what motivates all human behavior. And I feel very fortunate to be here at a time where our species, clever as it is, having figured out long ago how to commoditize entertainment, has now created a new medium. It's the first time in our species' history using technology in our digital information age to create a new entertainment medium where the audience can participate and can affect what happens in real time. And it's pretty fun. We're at the beginnings of this, but it's already become profound, not merely in the world of entertainment, but in the larger world. And I'm happy to be here for the ride. I'm excited about the seat I have. And even though I feel like I'm proud of a lot of the things we've accomplished at Gearbox Entertainment, I feel like we're just getting started, and there's so much left to do.
Well, that's saying a lot because there is so much left to do, but you've done so much. We're going to have just a few question and answers here, and then we're going to open it up for questions in the room. And we'd like for you to speak up and make this an interactive conversation. So one of the things that I was the most intrigued by in the nomination for you was the work in your vision, and you just related some of that, about how your vision is to use technology to make the world a better place. And as part of that, in one of your games, one of the things y'all highlighted is the Borderlands Science, which is a mini game within a game that you created. And tell me about the future of this citizen scientist type of gaming that you're on the forefront of.
Thank you. Yeah, Borderlands Science is a really fun experiment, and it was something that we had to go into without any commercial justification. But it turned out I used it as a thesis to defend such behavior. Let me explain what it is. We have a video game called Borderlands, and Borderlands Science is a video game within the video game. But when you play the Borderlands Science video game, you're not merely having fun, overcoming challenges, and experiencing this interactive content, but you're actually solving real-world medical problems. It turns out there's a lot of advances we've gotten where we figured out how to collect huge amounts of data that, if experts can analyze it, can help us learn something about how the world works. And sometimes, for example, there's a database of literally millions of photographs of space that certain experts in astronomy can identify and recognize patterns that could teach us something about the universe. But more exciting to me are data and images about ourselves. And we found this one data set with the Microsetta Institute where they collected poop. And they looked at microbes in our gut. Most of us are actually aliens. We have like millions and billions of microscopic organisms living within us that have this symbiotic relationship. And our gut and our digestive system has so much effect on our health and everything from how long we live to how healthy we are while we're here. And there's a huge volume of scientific research and medical research looking at this aspect of ourselves, trying to unlock secrets that can solve everything everything from IBS to Alzheimer's and everything in between. Real problems from cancer to COVID. Can be attacked by looking at this. And so what they did is they collected an astonishing volume of data, DNA, the actual genetic code of these microbes. But there's too much data for experts to analyze. So the kind of mind that is capable of recognizing patterns and understanding what they mean are rare on this planet, and they have lots of things to do. And so at the rate that it was going, it would take centuries to look through and process this data and understand something from it. So we thought, what if we made a video game? And it's kind of like a weird mix between like a match 3 kind of game where you like Bejeweled or something, or Candy Crush, and something like Tetris. But the data, these things that you're moving around in the video game, it's actually DNA. These are actually bits of genetic code. And we set it up in puzzles. So it's being input by the actual genetic data. Human beings are enjoying playing this game and solving these puzzles and creating feedback that scientists can now look at, and instead of having to look at millions and millions of pieces of data, they can focus on the interesting bits that are discovered through lining up this genetic code through this video game. And it was astonishing what we accomplished. We did the work in a year that would have taken a century. And it's through crowdfunding. We have millions and millions of people playing our video games. And why not put all that brain power, put all that creativity, reward it, entertain it, create joy and happiness, but also put it to work for us for the betterment of the species. And there was no way to rationalize that as a business move. But in so doing, it turned out it was kind of a novel thing, and it became very interesting. And so we got a lot of coverage. We're published in scientific journals, and we got a lot of mainstream coverage from the biggest newspapers and magazines, and obviously online representations of this in the world, which then of course leads to more customers for our video game, which pays for itself, and it's really quite rewarding.
That's awesome. So it's this whole idea of the citizen science gaming. It's growing. I know you mentioned when we were talking earlier that there's a whole genre of when you go to gaming, different forums and stuff. There's a whole wing of people working on stuff like that.
Yeah, I'll tell you though, it is very new. Borderlands Science was only the second commercial application of this citizen science concept. The first was in an online game called EVE Online. The people that worked with them on that program were the same people that worked with us. But we kind of pushed it to a new level. We invested in a way that hasn't been done before, and so now there's a huge amount of gravity. There are dozens of projects underway, and I think they're going to lead to some really exciting breakthroughs.
That's awesome. I was thinking back, and I owned Generation 1 Atari as a kid, and have been yes, I just dated myself.
This shirt has Pac-Man on it. I'm not sure.
I see that. He does. It does. He has Pac-Man on his shirt. There you go. Pong, yes. Asteroids, yes. All of those. And back then you bought a gaming platform and you bought games, and then it's evolved over time, to subscription-based and online gaming. I know the first time my son, when I saw EVE Online on my credit card, I'm like, what are you doing? Then he explained it to me, and I'm like, oh, that's a pretty cool game. And now, a lot of the monetization is in-app purchases and things like that, and modifications within the game. Where do you see that going in the future?
Well, I'm very enthusiastic about the creative sides of our business, and in order to fuel that, I have to take an interest in the business aspects. I'm more of an inventor than I am a businessman, but I will say that I think how this has kind of unfolded, it's not replacement. We're not moving from one thing to the next. Each innovation in business is led to an additive business model. So when we discovered that there were certain kinds of interactive experiences that were engaging enough where the audience that wanted to interact with that from a business perspective was happy to do it from a subscription point of view, when subscription models were added to this ecosystem, it didn't delete the existing premium model. The premium model is still there if you want to buy a game and play it. That, of course, is still there. And then following that were the free to play concept, of course, which has in-app purchases and microtransactions built in, and that as well became additive. It didn't delete subscriptions. It didn't delete premium. And even when premium showed up, like, you can still go to Dave and Buster's and pay 25 cents a time, or 50 cents, or probably $1.50 now. I don't know what. You can still find these arcade machines in movie theaters and in boardwalks around the world, and in some territories that is the preferred business model. The cyber cafes of South Korea, the old pachinko parlors of Japan and Southeast Asia have now become arcades, basically. And they're paying per play. And so those business models all exist. And we're constantly looking for more innovation there because the goal is to reach everybody. And everyone is going to have different comfort levels on how to interact. For many people that haven't grown up with video games, or it was just sort of one of the natural options of entertainment, it seems there's almost an allergy to the concept of going to a store like a Target or a Walmart, buying a console for hundreds of dollars, and then buying like, I don't even know what I'm doing if I haven't had that experience. What do I buy? Where do I start? What am I interested in? But for everyone today that has a phone, and to download something like Candy Crush, it costs $0. It's free, and that's a low-risk way to test and discover. And what people are discovering through free-to-play is that there are some compelling experiences. They're also discovering predatory experiences. But what I think you'll see moving forward are new innovations in business. I think there's a frontier that hasn't quite cracked yet with ad-based business models. We know this from the old days of television, how it was kind of neat that, if we had a TV, we didn't have to pay for content. The content was free for us, but we had to sit through these commercials. And in the best of those commercials found ways to try to entertain us while they were promoting their products. And some of us, our time is not as valuable, and we're comfortable sitting through those commercials. But the cost of buying content without commercials is a bigger hill to climb. And what's funny is video games kind of came from the opposite side. We started because we started with the arcades. Premium was the next model, and now we're going to evolve into the addition. And you can find now free to play games that are primarily ad driven. They're not going to charge you in app, but they're feeding you ads all the time. But the ads are terrible. And they're not really targeted well. They're usually ads for other games. And the kinds of ads that we're seeing in video games they're not really connected with the larger world of marketing. You feel that difference between the kinds of ads you see in a mobile app and the kinds of ads we're used to seeing on a sporting event on television.
Yeah, and they put sound on them even when you have sound turned off, so you get in trouble.
Right. They are innovating with interactive ads, and mostly these are video games where you're playing one video game, an ad will pop up for another and give you like the most simplistic, even worse version of a game to play while you're waiting for the 20 seconds to elapse or whatever it is that they're making you wait for. But that will get more sophisticated, both in the way it surfaces, but also how it's integrated and in the quality. As there's value there for advertisers, they're going to get better at making more interesting stuff. And I think that's a frontier there. I'm not particularly enthusiastic from a creative point of view on cracking that nut myself, but I know it's happening. And I think that for some audiences, that would like to play video games but don't have as much disposable income and do find themselves with time, ad revenue is a way to finance that kind of work. And at the end of the day, the artists have to eat too, so we should feel good about finding ways to finance their work. And I think that the best amongst us, the entertainers of this industry, the people that want a relationship with their customers like an entertainer has with an audience, they want to deliver value. Whatever the business model, they want the customer to always feel like they're getting the better end of the deal, which is the way I feel when I see, from when I went to see Hamilton in New York City, I'm like, I probably spent $300 on those tickets, and I was like, I totally got a bargain. This is amazing, But other times it doesn't go that way, and that's where we have to do, always make sure that we're thinking about the business model, what imposition we're having on the customer, and making sure that that we're living up to that imposition and exceeding the expectation they have for us.
So I'm going to change gears a little bit, and we're going to have one more question, then we're going to open it up to the audience here in person. As the parent of a 20-something-year-old who has been gaming since he first started pre-K and they put him in front of a computer, I worry about losing touch with reality. We've all read or seen the movie, the book and the movie Ready Player One, where the world seems to have lost touch with each other. As we've been isolated with COVID for the last couple of years, I've seen us, that fear get even greater as people have had to be isolated in self-isolation. How do you see us continuing this journey and interactive experiences to make it where it's bringing people together and not just replacing that human connection?
Most technological advances can be argued from the double-edged sword perspective. It's funny that you mentioned Ready Player One. Ernie Klein is a Texan. He lives down in Austin, the author of the book, and he drives a DeLorean. And a great guy. I've known him for a while, and I think he got some of that right. Now, of course, he's making entertainment,
right,
and he's exploring the fiction. But you're going to see both sides of it. In that tale, if you happen to see the movie instead of read the book, you'll even see Gearbox characters in the movie. Duke Nukem was one of the characters, and a whole bunch of characters from our games. There's some stuff. Claptrap was in it from Borderlands, and anyway, the point is that you'll see that there was some things about that universe that he imagined that are kind of heartwarming. This very poor, underprivileged person being able to connect with all of the information in the world, go into a virtual classroom with the best resources imaginable because it's virtual reality, something that would be completely inaccessible without that technology. But at the same time, you see others exploiting this reality and taking advantage. And human nature is what it is, and the best amongst us will use technology to build and to make the world more interesting. I always think of the analogy of a day at the beach. It's supposed to be a good time, and most people are there enjoying the sun, enjoying the sand, enjoying the water, and a handful of us will go down there and we'll construct sandcastles, and sometimes they're really nice to look at. And then there's someone that's going to come along and they just can't help themselves, and they're going to stomp on that sandcastle and crush it into the ground. And that's just the nature of human behavior. I don't think that I'm not one to believe in some of these thoughts of the perils of artificial intelligence and the inevitability of some kind of singularity that will very instantly be able to control us all. I don't subscribe to that, but I do acknowledge that there are going to be people that exploit the technology to the disadvantage of others. And we all need to be vigilant against that. When at the same time that I was talking about some of the upside of exploration of different video game business models, and I talked about how we should have a relationship with our customer that's like an entertainer with an audience member, where we're trying to make sure they get the better end of the deal. There are just as many people making these apps and making these video games where the relationship they're trying to have is more like the relationship that a tobacco company has with an addict, where they'll get them hooked and extract as much resources out of them as possible without caring what happens to their health or their well-being. And that's unfortunately part of our humanity. And I think it's fair to face it and realize that that's part of humanity and mitigate the weaknesses of it, and all of us can be vigilant in our part there, but also kind of bolster the people doing it right and get behind the strengths of the ingenuity that we have that's going to lead to the discoveries. I am excited about the metaverse. I think it's going to be led by content. I think the things that make us interested in jumping off the cliff and trying something new is the hope and dream of an experience that we could never have elsewise, right? It's most of the risk we take in the world, whatever that risk is because we're looking for an experience. We're hoping for an experience. And I think with technology, we can bring experiences like never before to the world. And I've joked for many years, before I even got into video games, I've joked that maybe the last invention that we ever make will be the holodeck, which is kind of like the Star Trek version.
Absolutely.
Because once you can simulate literally anything you can imagine, Like what yeah. But of course, in order to have that work, somebody has to make the content. The software's not going to generate itself. It's going to take some kind of creativity there. So I'll probably have a job in this metaverse future, and probably some of you will too.
I had the opportunity this afternoon, earlier today, to be with a group of 8th grade girls from Wiley ISD, and we were talking about STEM careers and had a panel of engineers and scientists, women who were sharing with them. And Q&A session, one of the young ladies asked, how does art fit into technology? And I'm like, oh my goodness, think about all of the games, think about all of the creativity that is there. I mean, yes, there's the science and the technology and the structure of building the programming and the code, but somebody's got to think it. Somebody's got to dream it and design it.
I mean, the dreams are what it's all about. That, by the way, thank you for doing that. There's, we believe that in order for us to be able to entertain the world, we need to be of the world, which is about the diversity of the creativity that happens within our company. The kinds of things that we make will be reflective of who we are. And we frankly, we need more women in our industry. And there's something that happens around middle school age, where before then, women, young women destroy young men with all of the STEM stuff, right? Just absolutely destroy us. But something happens around middle school where many young ladies lose interest. And I don't know how much of that's society, or I don't know what's the problem, but we need to attack that more. And we're trying some things there as well. But there's no way we could successfully entertain the world until our own population of our creators is reflective of that population at large, which means more than half of us need to be women making these games.
And we have to continue to encourage those young people to want to be interested in it.
Yes, yes.
So with that, let's turn to the audience. If you'll raise your hand, we'll point you out and ask a question, and then we'll repeat it for those on streaming. Okay, I warned y'all. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, hi, Paul Chandler from Ericsson. So I'm interested in the metaverse and the business models around gaming in the metaverse. Right? So now you can buy real estate in the metaverse. You can spend hundreds of millions of dollars on that. $80 million, I think, for art, and then NFT models for dealing in the metaverse. So now if I take gaming into the metaverse, so I now can bring virtual reality, augmented reality, holographic images, all these kind of things. But I'm trying to think in the gaming world, how would you monetize that? And what would be, could you do NFTs for games? Could you be thinking about something like that? Yeah. And what is the metaverse gaming where you have a universe where you can move around, see art, see museums, see real estate, live in places in the metaverse. So the gaming environment, like how do you translate it and how do you get money from it?
Yeah, so this is an interesting set of questions surrounding monetization in the metaverse. Some thoughts, looking for my thoughts about everything from NFTs to digital real estate, and thinking about how video games interact with this metaverse. And so yeah, I'll do my best to sufficiently answer what I think you're looking for from me. It is a frontier. I don't believe there's just going to be one metaverse. I think, in fact, there's a lot of things that already exist where virtual digital spaces are being created that can have different degrees of interfaces and interactivity to them. Some are full-fledged three-dimensional environments that you can access through virtual reality. Some you can access through your phones and your computers, and they all have different manifestations. There'll be more and more kind of integration attempted, but there'll also be fragmentation because different bodies building this stuff want to control the revenue stream. And so they're going to want to silo around their customers, protect the customers that they earn from other folks that would hope to capture them and monetize them. And there's a whole range of ways that we can interact and trade. And one of the other things I want to comment on related to your thought is, the idea of a video game, the word video game doesn't mean the same today that it did back at the beginning. It's kind of like how the evolution of movies happened. There's this word movie, which is kind of like this, almost childlike way of describing a motion picture. Back when that was coined, the adults at the time was like, this is for kids. And now we have, it's not movies, it's cinema, and we have a broad range of how we consider it as a craft, as an art, and as an enterprise. Video games have kind of evolved where it really just encompasses anything digital and interactive. Could be kind of bundled into this term, video game. In fact, many of the greatest interactive experiences right now, digital interactive experience, it's hard to even identify the part that makes it a quote unquote game. A game implies challenge. Challenge implies work, and work is not a synonym for fun. And this is the fundamental challenge that game designers have, to the point where most of us are kind of removing that work challenge part of it and just instead focusing on the entertainment aspect, the experiential aspects of it. And so most metaverse manifestations will fundamentally be both digital and interactive. Almost everything that we think of as the metaverse is basically some form of a video game. And what's ironic about that is, well, maybe not ironic, but kind of interesting, is the monetization and the business models are also evolving in this very gamified way, using gamification models that we've learned from video game business and applying them to other things like the trading of art with NFTs. You mentioned NFTs. I am simultaneously, almost paradoxically, excited and enthusiastic about the opportunities of metaverse, about the opportunities of crypto, but paradoxically, I also think there's a lot of it right now which is vapor, which smells more like Ponzi schemes than real value creation, and it's going to be interesting, with any frontier, there tends to be a reason why we talk about things like, oh, it's a gold rush, because there's some people that know there's opportunity but aren't exactly sure what it is and how to access it, but they can feel there's a movement. And some folks will move out west for FOMO, fear of missing out. Some will move out west because of a promise of opportunity, and it turns out that the land that they bought or the people that they went into business with, there's no actual gold in that hill that they bought a deed for, and so some people will lose, which is frustrating when others next door are winning so incredibly much. I think, though, the one thing that is impossible to escape from is there is value in content and there's value in intellectual property, and the scale of that value directly relates to the extent to which I think the metrics are simple. It's how many people does it reach, and to what extent does it gratify, stimulate, and engage them. And this is a product, not an additive. These two metrics are a product, right? Having something that doesn't reach a lot of people but is exceptionally engaging and very stimulating and very gratifying can be worth a lot to those people. It explains why some of us spend an exorbitant amount of money into our hobbies. But meanwhile, you can have something that reaches a huge amount of people, maybe not that engaging or compelling, but it's reaching a lot of people and it's monetizing. The dream, of course, is deeply engaging and for many, many people. Maximal engagement, maximal number of people. And that's one thing that I think is hoped for with the metaverse. And this value of IP, this value of content, I mean, we see evidence of it. Yesterday, Microsoft did the largest transaction of its history. It bought a company called Activision Blizzard, a video game company, for $70 billion. And arguably the only thing that Activision Blizzard has to offer is content, intellectual property, and the talent that knows how to deliver it. And that it wasn't a new tool, it wasn't a new process, it wasn't a new function. That content and the ability to deliver it became the most valuable thing that Microsoft has ever decided to acquire. It's incredible.
Thanks, that's great. What other questions do we have in the room?
So how are you addressing labor? You talked about wanting to get a more diversified workforce, but are you struggling to just get workforce in general right now? How is it going? Some of us have lots of open recs in technology. So what's your experience with resourcing and being able to grow your team?
That's a great question. The question's about how can we grow? What challenges are we facing with resourcing, with finding people and finding talent? And how are we solving that? It is true that our limiting factor is people. The last time I came and spoke to the Tech Titans was in 2007 or 8, and I think we were about 90 people. Today, my company is over 1,000 people, and it's been a steady growth. And yet, I feel like within the next 3 years, I want to be 2,000 people. So this is a really interesting problem. Fortunately, I'm in kind of an interesting industry where there's a lot of people that dream about the idea of someday getting involved in making video games. Unfortunately, it's really difficult to do. So even though almost everyone who plays a video game as a child is like, oh, wouldn't it be fun to get paid to do this? At some point they realize that there's real skills and challenges in front of those that want to perform at that world-class level. And playing a game isn't the same as making a game. And so we don't get all of them. But we start from a really big advantage. But Gearbox does a lot to plant seeds ourselves. You know, right here in Dallas, we know about SMU. We created a program with SMU called the SMU Guild Hall. I was the first guild master of the Guild Hall, and the Guild Hall was the first master's degree program for video game development. And we started with a curriculum that I helped create that teaches postgraduate students, this is a master's degree, how to become designers and artists and programmers and now producers in this industry of interactive digital entertainment. And that's there. So now we have pilot programs that we're developing with even younger students down to elementary age. We have over 2,000 students in Longview ISD that are learning Gearbox design curriculum to learn how to become video game developers. And this is a strategy of grow your own talent, because we can't count on the environment to supply it for us. And it's a big part of how we've been able to grow to this point, but it's also, I think, going to be more important moving forward. But it's just one piece. I will confess that some of Gearbox's growth to 1,000 heads was inorganic. About a third of it came through M&A, through acquiring capability. And in fact, I think the next half the next like 50% growth will be M&A. So that's accelerating as well. But again, that will run out. All that speaks to is this moment of consolidation that we're experiencing, and that my company has a role in that consolidation. But consolidation can't go on forever, because it has to grow from somewhere. If all you're going to do is reap harvest that already exists, eventually all those you have to at some point plant seeds. So that's why we take that two-prong approach. We're planting seeds. Some of the people that go through our curriculum, most of the people that go through our curriculum will not become employees of Gearbox. They will go on. Some of them will do startups. Some of them will join other companies. But it amplifies the ecosystem, and eventually some of that hopefully will help us and help the environment.
I want to add to that question a little bit. What are you doing for those employees that you have, that 1,000 you have? How are you retaining them? Because the job market is so hot that it's so easy to jump. You know,
it's a great question. We have a notoriously low turnover rate at Gearbox. More than half of the people that were with me in 1999 when we made published our first video game, they're still at the company, which is astonishing. You know, it's 23 years now, and we have very low turnover, and I think there's several components to it. The most important component, I think, is the culture and our values. Our values are happiness and creativity and profit, and happiness and creativity come first, and interestingly enough, when we're more successful there, the profit tends to follow. But profit is one of our values, and it's not just at the company. When I founded Gearbox, I established the most generous profit-sharing program in the video game industry. Literally a full half of our profit is immediately redistributed as royalty bonuses to the talent of the company. And this isn't a subjective system that I created. I created an objective system where even my own beliefs and ideas about who contributed what values, even my own influence cannot materially manipulate the system. It's completely math-driven, mostly based on time, which reduces politics for earning it and enhances a sense of involvement and alignment with what we're trying to create, the value that we're trying to create for that third pillar of our values, that profit pillar. I have people that are at, hierarchically would be argued to be at the lowest rungs of the organization that think like owners because they have direct upside in the result. And some of them, there are literally people in the quality assurance teams at Gearbox, which start as entry-level people that have been at the company so long that their share in the profit sharing is equivalent to my own, which is astonishing. And that creates alignment. Now, in 2021, we did a deal where we merged with a holding company called the Embracer Group, which is a Swedish-based company. There's like a dozen people at the Embracer Group. They are an interface to publicly traded markets in Europe, and the CEO has found access to all this great European capital. So as a means of maintaining full autonomy, but having access to capital and and having access to being publicly traded without having to deal with all that myself, we joined this group, and in leading up to that, I literally gave a third of the company away to the employees. And now we have alignment on not merely the value of our products, the profitability of our products, but the value of the company itself, because the company is shareholders. And I think alignment is a big part of it. So culture and alignment, I think, are in alignment on the challenges, and we're facing them together, but the rewards that we reap. And I think that does a lot to serve the retention and the I guess just the general ability of Gearbox people to believe in the vision, believe in the dream.
Thank you. Yeah, Dad.
So when you think of yourself in the entertainment industry, and you think of, we're coming out of COVID, you see what happened to the movie industry, you say movies versus, entertainment, and you're more interactive entertainment, and Netflix. Where do you see the combination around, interactive entertainment, gaming, into traditional entertainment with paid actors and in this metaverse?
It's a great question. Yeah, the question's about what's the relationship between interactive entertainment, traditional like linear media like film and television. You mentioned Netflix. And you also mentioned COVID, like how's that changing because we're coming out of the pandemic? It is true that going into the pandemic, when we were locking down in 2020, people didn't go to movie theaters, and most movie theaters around the country were closed down. And there's lots of forms of public entertainment that just shut down. Theme parks were shut down. Meanwhile, video games did better than ever. 2020 was an astonishing boom for our industry, and we saw investment following that as well. Now, of course, when you have that happen, that's a blip. That's sort of an artificial acceleration in favor of video games, and an artificial deceleration against live entertainment and like live experiential kind of stuff, even going to a movie theater. And so it's starting to recalibrate again. We saw almost every video game stock boom in 2020, and almost every video game stock took a hit in 2021 as it flattened after that burst. We saw all of the film industry get slaughtered in 2020, but we're starting to feel a recovery. In my view, as an entertainment company who has definitely prioritized interactive, Gearbox, we call ourselves the Gearbox Entertainment Company, but most people think of us as a video game company. In fact, we do more than video games. It's just interactive is the newest frontier. It's very stimulating, and it's growing rapidly. So we've felt tremendous success there. But even in 2005, I think we did our first documentary on the History Channel with one of our video game series called Brothers in Arms, and we created a documentary about paratroopers in World War II based on all the research and using our video game technology to render environments and show what happened without having to find a time machine. We used a virtual time machine. So I've been kind of into transmedia for a while, and I've actually made a big new investment there. In fact, 6 months ago, I founded Gearbox Studios. I'm creating a film and television business as a subsidiary of Gearbox Entertainment in the middle of a pandemic. I'm doing that for a reason. As incredible as the growth of video games are, as amazing it is and astonishing it is that we have people playing in our game Borderlands for literally thousands of hours, as astonishing as that is, there will still be people that will never play one of our video games. And some of those people that spend 1,000 hours playing Borderlands have friends, family, that they would love to invite to this world, but they're never going to get them to play the video game with them. But guess what? They can get them into a movie theater or watch it at home in their living rooms. And so we're surfacing our entertainment in transmedia. In fact, we did a deal years ago. I think I first started the process 8 years ago to try to develop Borderlands into a motion picture. And eventually I was able to do a deal with Lionsgate Entertainment. If you know Lionsgate, they do the John Wick movies, they did Knives Out, they did all the Hunger Games films, they did the Twilight, big studio. And we developed this film. I got Arad Productions to be my production company. Arad Productions, if you're not familiar, Avi Arad was the founder and CEO of Marvel Studios. So Avi Arad, created the Spider-Man film with Tobey Maguire and all the things that followed. If you saw the latest Spider-Man movie, you'll see a note at the end credits. The filmmakers wish to thank Avi Arad for believing in these characters and making all of this possible. Literally, created the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe from nothing, just belief that these comic book characters had value in larger culture. So they figured out how to crack the nut and make entertainment out of comic books in the big screen, and they wanted to see if they could help me do the same thing with video games. So I got them involved, and we did it. We got Craig Mazin to develop a script for us. Craig created and wrote the Chernobyl series. That was on HBO, which is incredible. He also wrote the Hangover movies. So that's the range that this guy has. And then we got Eli Roth to direct the film. Eli did the House with the Clock in the Walls, and he did horror movies like Hostel, and of course he's an actor too. He was in Inglourious Bastards. He was the Bear Jew in the Inglourious Bastards. But we assembled an unbelievable cast: Cate Blanchett, Kevin Hart, Jack Black, Gina Gershon, Jamie Lee Curtis. I mean, legends. And I got to live. I spent most of the pandemic in 2021 living in Budapest shooting this movie. We're in post-production now. You'll hear about it. We tend to market these movies, in the months leading up to them, not the years leading up to them. This will be a movie that will come out in 2023. But this is a vanguard. This is a vanguard into our investment into transmedia, because I know that there's going to be people that want to share the Borderlands with their friends and family that will never convince them to play a video game. And I also know that there will be people that will be interested. There is some value that we've created here with characters and storytelling, more than just the gameplay, that people love, but they're just not going to do it interactively. And if I am going to succeed at that mission of entertaining the world, I'm going to have to open ourselves to more mediums than just interactive. I'm going to have to be comfortable with the whole spectrum of mediums. I'm currently investing in Broadway to learn a lot about live entertainment. You'll hear about it next year, later this year. It's called Once Upon a One More Time, and it's a jukebox musical with the music of Britney Spears. And the story is basically Disney princesses that are trying to figure out how, instead of living the lives prescribed to them by the narrator, they want to figure out how to tell their own stories and live their own. And it's a beautiful story, women empowerment, and it captures the Free Britney movement while putting the music. So it's a fun musical. I think it's going to kill. I'm not sure. I don't know if we'll win any Tonys, but we're definitely going to make some money and entertain some people. So we'll see how that one goes.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see that. Well, I think we've got time for one more short question. So anybody got a burning question you want to ask? Okay, I'm going to ask one last question. You can't have much time to do this, but what are you reading?
That's interesting. So I am before I became a video game developer, I was a professional magician. in Hollywood, California, I worked at the Magic Castle and at a nightclub called Wizards. And now magic's not a career, but it's still a hobby. So I'm currently in the middle of 2 books. One is called Sawing. We recently celebrated the 100th anniversary of the invention of the illusion of like sawing a person in half. And this great magician and historian named Mike Caveney wrote this wonderful book called Sawing, which it's a work of a madman. The amount of depth that, I mean, he's literally been writing this book for 40 years, and it's the whole 100-year history of that illusion. It's beautiful. And then there's another book that a friend of mine who is a magician out of New York, a gentleman named Ossie Wynn, wrote called Before We Begin. And I can't tell you what it's about without spoiling my oath about protecting the secrets of magic. But it's an incredible deep dive into some techniques that he has developed and mastered to perform. And you haven't heard the name Ossie Wynn, but he is, if you've ever heard of a magician, David Blaine, most of his best stuff, Ossie's been behind it. A creator, an inventor, a driver, and when David Blaine tours, Ossie is in the show. He does the intermission, or not really an intermission, but an interlude as David recovers because he does some stunts. He holds his breath for 10 minutes underwater, and he actually does it, and it's like really hard for him. So he has to get this other guy out there to entertain the crowd for a minute while he recovers or prepares, depending on the timing of the show. But he's great, and the book's great. And thank you for asking.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Get
very
Sawing,
much.
Though. You don't need to be a magician. It's really a cool book. I'm totally neck deep in it. Sawing by Mike Caveney.
Cool. Put it on my list for my son. Randy, thank you so much for your
Thanks
time.
for having me.
Thank you all for your participation. Thank you for those of you who are online. I appreciate everybody. We're going to end here. And for those of you joining us at the gala, we'll go across the street to the Performing Arts Center.